A haunting tale of a girl who vanished, returned, and disappeared again, leaving behind only silence, memory, and the faint scent of something that never fully left. I never thought much about the apartment below mine. It was just there, like wallpaper in a dream, always silent, always closed. I don't even remember seeing the door open. Not once. The curtains were thick and unmoving. No sounds of a TV, no soft thud of footsteps. Just the occasional scrape of a chair late at night, the groan of old pipes, a muffled shift in weight. It was the kind of quiet you only notice in hindsight, the kind that seeps under your skin long after it begins. Then the smell started. At first, it was barely there. Faint, metallic. A whisper of rot behind something more chemical, like sour milk and rust. I thought it was the plumbing, maybe something moldy in the walls. This building was full of problems no one had time to fix. I cracked open windows and burned candles. On better days, I convinced myself it was gone, but it always came back. Still, I didn't think of her. Not then. It took weeks for the smell to get unbearable. A clinging kind of stench, one that soaked into your sweaters and refused to leave. I filed a complaint with the landlord. Said it might be a dead rat or something leaking into the drywall. I didn't expect much to come of it. Maintenance in our building moved at the pace of melting ice. But 3 days later, I came home to the sight of 2 men in gray uniforms standing outside the door downstairs. They didn't knock, they broke the lock. When the door opened, the hallway filled with a sick, heavy heat. One of the men staggered back, pressing his arm to his nose. I didn't go closer. I couldn't. I stood at the top of the stairs, heart racing, eyes fixed on the threshold like it might swallow them both whole. Then I saw her. She wasn't dead. She was sitting on the floor near a bare mattress, knees pulled to her chest. Her eyes were open but glazed over, as if she were seeing something just beyond the wall. She didn't move when they called to her. She didn't even flinch. Her skin was pale, her lips were cracked, and her hair was matted and thin. The room was empty except for the mattress, a blanket, an overturned chair, and silence. No phone, no food, no pictures, no light. She was alive, but not living. The building buzzed for days afterward. People whispered in the stairwell, eyes wide with guilt and shock. No one had known, no one had heard. The man she'd lived with, if he existed, was already gone. Disappeared like a stain under fresh paint. Some claimed they remembered his face. Most just shook their heads. The police said she'd been reported missing. That she had been held there for weeks, maybe longer. But somehow she survived. She didn't say much to anyone, gave only short answers to doctors and police. The landlord said she had no family nearby. The hospital discharged her after 2 weeks. And then impossibly she came back. To the same apartment. The locks were changed, the walls were scrubbed, but she moved right back in. Neighbors watched from behind curtains, waiting for someone to stop her. No one did. She didn't speak to anyone. She came and went quietly, usually alone. Once, I saw her sitting on the bench near the bus stop, staring down the street for nearly an hour without blinking. Her clothes hung loose on her frame. Her hair was short now, unevenly cut. She walked slowly, like each step cost her something. I started hearing her again. The faint tread of her footsteps, always soft, always deliberate, the occasional drag of furniture across the floor, running water at odd hours. But the sound didn't scare me. It felt different now, less like haunting, more like endurance. Then came the power outage. A fuse blew, taking out half the building. I hesitated for almost an hour before going down. I told myself I was just checking in, that I would leave if she didn't answer. But she did. She opened the door without a word and stepped aside. Inside, her apartment was stripped of almost everything. A candle burned on the low table. The walls were pale and clean, but cracked at the corners. I don't remember saying something about the outage, probably. She didn't speak, just nodded once and sat back down on the floor. For the first time, she looked directly at me. And something in that gaze stayed with me. She wasn't hollow anymore. She was aware, watching. After that, I noticed her more. Not because she was more visible, but because I had started looking. She followed quiet routines, walked the same path, paused in front of the same window at the bakery, sat on the same bench by the park, always with a small notebook in hand. She never wrote in it. I left fruit by her door sometimes. Apples, a bag of mandarins, even a few sunflowers once, wrapped in newspaper. They were always gone by morning, never acknowledged, never returned. She began walking farther. To the riverside path, past the old bridge, longer hours, slower returns. I wondered what she was searching for. Then one evening I saw her stop in the middle of the sidewalk. She turned suddenly, eyes locked on a man walking past her. He didn't see her, or pretended not to. She didn't move for a long time. Then she turned around and walked away. That night, she didn't come home. At first, I didn't think much of it. Maybe she stayed somewhere else. Maybe it was progress, a step toward reclaiming her life. But the next morning, the fruit I left was still there. The day after that, too. On the third morning, I noticed the smell. Faint, subtle, but unmistakable. Like a memory returning to life. I called the landlord again. He hesitated, his voice weighed down with unease and that old, familiar tone of resignation. Still, he sent someone. When they pried the door open, the silence felt thicker than ever. The scent met us immediately, not as strong as before, but distinct. The kind of scent that doesn't just linger in the air but presses against the skin, as if trying to remind you of something you tried to forget. Inside, everything was intact. Nothing disturbed, nothing destroyed, no signs of violence. Her shoes were by the door, lined neatly. A coat draped across the back of a chair. On the windowsill sat the same notebook she always carried, its pages still unmarked. On the table was a single peach, untouched, next to the candle she always kept lit, now reduced to a pool of hardened wax. But she was gone. Not missing in the traditional sense. Not like someone who might return. It felt different. Final. Her presence had been erased without effort or ceremony. Her absence wasn't loud, it was quiet and precise. Not even the dust had been disturbed. There was no trail to follow, no packed bags, no sign that she had even intended to leave. The window was open. The air outside was cold. A breeze moved through the room, gently tugging at the corners of a paper that had been placed on the floor beneath the candle. It was blank, save for a small smudge of ash in the corner. No message, no hint. Just silence left behind, as if that was all she ever meant to give. The police were contacted, but no urgency followed. No evidence of foul play, no legal cause for alarm. She had disappeared quietly, without trace, and the world responded in kind. Her file remained unresolved. Her name slipped from the tongues of neighbors and into that void where unsolved things go. People stopped asking questions. The building returned to its stillness. But the stillness had changed. Her apartment remained sealed. The landlord tried to list it, but no one stayed long. Each new tenant left within weeks, citing poor sleep, strange dreams, and the sensation of being watched from the corners of the room. Complaints of soft noises at night, furniture shifting, and water running at odd hours. Some said it was just nerves. Others moved out without explanation. I didn't go back inside. But I walked past it often. The hallway outside her door still held that subtle weight. Not fear, not exactly. Just a strange kind of gravity, as if time moved slower there. Some days I paused, listening for movement, knowing there'd be none. Yet part of me believed deep down that if I stayed long enough, I might hear her steps again. A soft chair scraping, a faucet is running, a presence returning. The fruit stopped long before she left. Even so, I found myself once again standing with a bag of oranges in my hand, unsure of what I was doing. I placed them gently by her door. In the morning, they were still there. I didn't do it again. Weeks passed, then months. I went on with my life, paid rent, took work home, slept in fits and starts. The nights were the hardest. Some evenings I'd wake with the sense that someone had been watching me sleep. No sound, no movement, just the kind of awareness you can't explain, the feeling of being remembered by something you forgot. It wasn't grief. I didn't know her well enough for that. It was something else. An echo, maybe, of a connection too quiet to name. I tried to reason it away. I told myself that trauma leaves imprints, even on bystanders. That empathy bends reality sometimes. That the mind can imagine ghosts into rooms where none exist. And yet, one night I woke to the scent again. Faint, barely there, not rotting, not wrong, just known. I got out of bed, walked to the window, and looked down at the street below. Nothing. Just a flickering street lamp and the dull shimmer of rain. I stared for a long time, expecting nothing but somehow waiting anyway. The candle on my table was burning. I didn't remember lighting it. The wick hissed softly in the dark, its flame still, casting long shadows across the room. I sat in the quiet, listening to the building breathe, pipes sighing and wood shifting. For the first time in a while, the silence didn't feel empty. It felt like being watched, but not by something threatening. Something is waiting. I never saw her again. No sightings, no reports, no updates. The world moved on, but the space she left behind remained untouched. In its own way, it became a kind of monument, not to her life, but to her return, her choice. The mystery of it never faded. It simply changed shape like a wound that scabs over but never fully heals. Eventually, someone did move into the apartment. A young couple, bright, talkative. They painted the walls and hung art, played music loud enough for me to hear through the floor, laughed often. The kind of people who filled up space completely. I thought that maybe it would break the cycle. that whatever remained in that room might finally be erased. But sometimes, when their music stops and the hallway grows quiet, I still hear a different kind of silence leaking up through the floorboards. And on colder nights, the smell returns, faint, barely more than a memory, sweet, metallic, lingering. The kind of smell that holds on to places long after the story ends.